Well, good evening. I guess it's evening now or late afternoon. My name is Michelle Immels, and I am the director of our Caregiver Live Well program at Intermountain. And I am going to introduce our speaker. We have a great presentation for you all. But before I get started, I just wanted to share a few housekeeping things. We are recording the presentation so that we'll be able to share it on the website later for those who might have missed it, or if you want to go back and look at anything. So it is being recorded. And I will also be monitoring the chat throughout. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation or at the end of the presentation, feel free to type those in the chat, and I will share those with Jessica as we go so that she's not trying to read the chat as she's presenting. And we'll go ahead and get started. I'll introduce Jessica and then let her say a few words and jump into her presentation. So Jessica LaRoche is a registered dietitian and certified specialist in sports dietetics. She completed her master's degree in nutrition at the University of Utah in 2010 and started her career in clinical nutrition setting. She quickly determined that she wanted to pursue sports dietetics and was fortunate to have dedicated mentors in the field as she pursued her sports nutrition certification. She started working with the U.S. speed skating team in 2014 as their team dietitian and traveled with them to the World Cup events and the 2018 Winter Olympics, which sounds just so super exciting. I hope you'll share some of your adventures with us in the presentation. After that, she changed gears and she continues to work with the U.S. track cycling program, as well as athletes in road, mountain, and BMX biking, as well as the triathlon, which must keep you really busy. That's so exciting. She is also supporting the U.S. ski and snowboard team and the women's professional tennis through the WTA as a contract dietitian. In her free time, Jessica enjoys running with plenty of trails in Park City and traveling as well. So Jessica, I will turn it over to you to present today, and we're really excited to learn more about sports supplements.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Yes, busy indeed and all fun, and this is the area I just really enjoy, is kind of the sports side of nutrition as well as sports supplements. Kind of being with elite athletes, realizing that there can be a time and place for sports supplements. So hopefully tonight, if this is an area you're more interested in, I'll be able to present some background as well as resources if you have further questions as we go on. So I will jump into it just in the interest of time. I'll turn my video off so that's not too distracting as well. So tonight we're going to review safety and effectiveness with these goals in mind. So to identify what are sports supplements, how are supplements regulated in the US, the effectiveness of select sports supplements. So I had to be very selective here because there are obviously hundreds and hundreds of supplements. And then as well as resources for after the presentation if you do have further questions. So jumping right in. Supplement regulation in the United States. It's a little tricky. Before 1994, supplements fell under a similar guideline and regulatory system as food did. However, in 1994, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act was passed. And this defined what dietary ingredients are, and it took them out of the realm of food regulation and just kind of put them off on their own. So the FDA has oversight of the whole supplement program. However, it gets a little bit interesting as far as how well regulated they are. So what this Act of 1994 did was define a dietary ingredient that's intended to supplement the diet. And these can be marketed in many different forms. The most common we see are tablets, capsules, powders, liquids. So you can see here in the gray box what the definition of a dietary ingredient is, and it contains any combination of the following there. So vitamins, minerals, herbs, amino acids, things intended to supplement the diet. Anything that was in the marketplace before 1994 was grandfathered in as a dietary ingredient. It's out there, it's fine. They also defined new dietary ingredients. So if something meets the criteria of the gray box, but it came into the marketplace after October 15th, 1994, then extra steps need to be taken to ensure safety of that. But the big thing from this act, and we'll go into here, some interesting things. So manufacturers and distributors of the actual dietary supplements are the ones responsible for making sure the products are safe before they go to the marketplace. The FDA does not do any testing on supplements before they hit the marketplace. So it's, just assuming that manufacturer and distributors have done their homework, they're out there, they're safe. If a dietary supplement contains a new ingredient, so after October 15th, 1994, manufacturers do have to notify the FDA. However, it's just reviewed by the FDA. It's not approved or denied. So it's very different than if we think of how drugs make it to the marketplace, or vaccines, which may be, more on our minds right now. So ends up in the marketplace and manufacturers say, yes, we have reason to believe this is safe and this is why. There are some manufacturing guidelines that the FDA requires manufacturers to comply with. Again, the oversight gets a little bit tricky. So really what it comes down to is these supplements make it out into the marketplace, and if adverse events are not reported to the FDA, they just kind of stay out there. So it gets a little tricky to know, well, do we actually have in these supplements what the label says? Because nobody's really double checking that. So we'll talk a little bit in a couple slides on how we can ensure that, yes, this supplement contains what it says. Because you probably have seen on news reports where some third parties go out, test supplements, and it's very different what's in them versus what's on the label. So the FDA, again, they're not authorized to review dietary supplements for safety and effectiveness before they're marketed. After the fact, once they're out in the marketplace, if these adverse events are reported to the FDA, they can then go and investigate the manufacturers. So just a little bit of background, supplements are regulated very differently than pharmaceuticals and drugs. Just a quick overview of what is a sport supplement. So we have just regular dietary supplements, which are usually used to treat deficiencies. So if you go and have a blood test and you're low in vitamin D or you're low in iron, you would then find a dietary supplement to replace that deficiency. More in the sport realm, we have what's called ergogenic aids or performance supplements. These are what you would take with the intent of enhancing your performance. We're going to go through some of these, something like caffeine or nitrate, which is beetroot juice, or beta-alanine. And then there's sport supplements and foods, and these are foods and beverages formulated for sport. So if you think of like Gatorade or some sport chews, the gummies that you might take during sport, or gels, that's the sport food and supplements. So we talked about quality assurance and how do we know we're actually getting what we think we're getting in a supplement. There are third parties out there that manufacturers can pay to have their product tested to show, yes, it does in fact contain what this product says it contains in those correct amounts. So USP is one that you'll see quite often. If you're familiar with like Nature Made, I believe Kirkland brand also has USP. This organization tests for purity and potency. So to make sure that, yes, if it says it has 65 milligrams of iron, we've tested it and it does. And it doesn't have other substances in there. Then if you're someone, or if you know somebody who is in a testing pool, like for banned substances, so at a high level of sport where you might be tested, then we go a step further and say, okay, really look for NSF certified for sport or informed choice, because those are also doing a huge panel to test for like over 200 banned substances to make sure that this supplement doesn't contain any of those, whether it's through just cross-contamination in a manufacturing facility, or sometimes companies will put substances that they're not disclosing into the product because they do work, but however, they're banned from these elite levels of sport. So USP is the general one if you're looking for like vitamins and minerals. And then if you do a lot of sport products for supplementing to help with performance, it's always good to look for NSF certified for sport or informed choice. So today there's Australian Institute of Sport has done a really great job with a supplement framework. They revamped this about a year ago. They took a hiatus for a couple years and it was disappointing, but they do a great job researching these sport supplements, and they're analyzing them for safety, whether they're permitted in sport, and if there's actually evidence that they work. So they have a classification system, A, B, C, D. So we're going to use this framework throughout because their website is just wonderful. If there's other supplements that you're interested in, I would encourage you to go to their site because they have wonderful like infographics for consumers as well as more professional information with a lot more of the research. So we're going to jump right into these group A supplements. These are supplements that have strong scientific evidence for use in specific situations in sport. So they've been very well researched and they have, the research supports their use for specific situations. So there's a bunch of them. We're not going to go through all of them. I've picked a few that are more common that we'll look at more in depth, but sports foods, this is a huge category. So much research on endurance like sport, you know, over 90 minutes and actually taking in calories and carbohydrates. So all the different sport food products. Medical supplements. So again, these are more for deficiencies or if you have low intake in your diet. So iron, probiotics, calcium, vitamin D, multivitamins, and zinc. And then the performance supplements, caffeine, sodium bicarbonate, beta-alanine, creatine, beetroot juice, and glycerol. So I'm just going to touch on a few of these. And again, if you're interested in some of the others that I don't go into depth on, please feel free to look at the framework on the Australian Institute of Sports webpage. So first, the sport foods. This just tried and true. You would use these for, you know, more endurance-based events that are going to start to go over about 90 minutes, or for high intensity, shorter duration, they can be beneficial. They are formulated to rapidly absorb into the bloodstream and provide carbohydrate for your exercising muscle and to keep you mentally sharp. So we know that blood glucose and glycogen, your stores of carbohydrate, decrease over time during sport. And so these are there to kind of help maintain those levels. How and when to use. So again, if you're doing very high intensity exercise, 45 to 75 minutes, there may be some benefit to a small amount of carbohydrate. Or if you've heard of mouth rinsing, so if it is a short, intense session, rinsing with a carbohydrate drink and then spitting it, so not actually ingesting it, can also help. It stimulates the brain and it just gives you that extra bump for those shorter duration. Anything 1 to 2.5 hours, the goal is 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. So that's where those sports foods, those concentrated carbohydrate sport foods can come into play. And then ultra endurance events, if you're regularly out there for 2.5 to 3+ hours, your body could tolerate up to 90 grams of carb an hour. It's a lot, and you have to train your gut in this area and also use different products that have different sugars so they're absorbed. If you're in that category, hopefully you've been playing around with this. If that's something you need help with, that's where a dietitian can help you out, is to really make sure you can get in those carbohydrates that you need. And then just some considerations to think about with this. Again, that gut training. So if you've been doing endurance activity but not eating much while you're out there, you don't suddenly want to get 60 grams of carbs an hour. You're going to want to ease into that, because part of training, right, we're training our muscles, we're training our body, we're also training our gut to be able to handle this influx of carbohydrate. And if you are aiming for greater than 60 grams per hour, finding products that contain a glucose to fructose ratio of 2 to 1 can help with absorption. That gets more technical, but if you're in that category, you've probably at some point or another realized, oh, okay, I can't do all one sugar, or it's just not going to end well. Next one we'll take a look at is the isolated proteins. Tons of protein powder out there. Protein is a building block of muscle, bone, cartilage, skin, blood enzymes, and hormones. So protein really does help maintain and build muscle, helps with recovery, and protein helps us feel more full, more so than carbohydrates. There's a lot of different protein out there. A lot of them are dairy-based, so you see like whey proteins and casein. Whey is, they're all dairy protein is high biological value, which means it has the right proportions of all of the amino acids in proportions we need. Whey proteins absorb a lot more quickly than casein, so a lot of times people will use whey protein after workouts and casein more at nighttime for that slow release overnight. There's also egg proteins, which are also high biological value. Soy, again, that is a high biological value protein as well. It is digested pretty rapidly, similar to whey. It's just lower in leucine, one of the amino acids, than whey. And leucine is one of the amino acids that really stimulates muscle repair and growth. So if you're looking to build lean mass, you do want to have sufficient leucine. And then other plant proteins, you see now pea, hemp, rice, they're a lower biological value, but you can fortify them with leucine and other amino acids to help get them to be a higher biological value. So that's great for like vegan athletes who don't want to do a dairy base and just don't want to do soy. We can still get those other plant proteins up to the high biological value. How and when to use. Protein requirements in general are 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. So taking your weight, divide it in pounds, divide it by 2.2 will help you find kilograms, and then multiplying by 1.2 to 1.6. So that's how you can quickly kind of figure out what do you need for protein in a day. If you're looking to lose weight but try to maintain that lean mass, protein goes up. It's always best to use a food first approach. However, understanding life gets crazy and training schedules and commitments, there are times when a supplement can be useful. Like if you do need to rapidly get protein into you after key workouts, if you have a really big like anabolic focused workout, you can fortify meals lower in protein. So breakfast tends to be pretty low in protein for a lot of people. So if you're someone that's like just doing oatmeal in the morning, you could put a little bit of protein powder in the oatmeal to up the amount of protein. Same for pre-bed snack. If you're traveling places with questionable food safety, so if you tend to travel for races or events and food is questionable, bringing protein powder can be an option. And then as an alternative to whole foods or bulky meals if appetite's poor. So again, after a hard workout, maybe appetite's suppressed, there could be a place for some protein powder. Considerations, you have to consider expense. If you can get food and that's convenient enough, that is a great way to go. Also the overall nutrient intake. So a lot of food sources of protein also have like zinc, calcium, iron. You're missing out on those with a protein powder. Next, beetroot juice. This kind of comes and goes in popularity. It helps increase nitric oxide in the body, which it dilates your blood vessels. So you then have higher blood flow. So as you're exercising, you would have higher blood flow to your muscles because your vessels are dilated. It can be used chronically, meaning like every day before an event or acutely before a key workout or race. And it can help with exercise capacity performance and reduce the amount of oxygen cost of exercise. It's most effective for events of 4 to 30 minutes in duration, as well as intermittent team sports, so things like soccer or basketball. It is very specific, the research, on dose that you need to actually have a metabolic effect. So it's that 6 to 8 millimoles or 350 to 500 milligrams. Consumed 2 to 3 hours prior to exercise or a couple days prior to competition. One study looked at specific brands and beat it. So this one that I had a picture of on the previous slide, they had sufficient amount to have the proper reaction in the body. Other brands don't necessarily. So that's something you'd want to look into, is how can you get that 350 to 500 milligrams of nitrate. Considerations with this, it doesn't work as well for highly trained athletes. So if you're someone who does exercise a lot, has been training a lot, have a high VO2 max, it's probably not going to benefit you as much. So these cyclists in the Tour de France, so there's someone doing VO2 max, it probably not as much of a benefit. If you're someone just starting out in exercise and really trying to make some adaptation, it could be more useful for you. Moving on to caffeine, this one is a favorite. Most of the benefit seems to come from central nervous system effects. It can reduce your perception of fatigue, and it can also help you with pacing and skill cognitively, so make you more sharp in the later stages of your activity. It's most effective for endurance activity over 60 minutes. So if you're doing shorter activity, maybe not as beneficial. However, it is also for brief, sustained, high-intensity sports of 1 to 60 minutes, team or intermittent sports. So again, like the basketballs or soccer, lacrosse, or single efforts involving strength and power. Little bit less research on the strength and power and much more convincing research for endurance activity. And the doses aren't quite as high as we used to think they were. It's about 3 milligrams per kilogram of body mass. So again, not a huge amount. If you're, let's say, 70 kilos, that's around that 200 milligrams of caffeine. You would use it 60 to 90 minutes before exercise, or you could use it during exercise if you have a very long event and just need to pick me up somewhere in there, or later in exercise as fatigue really develops. So a lot of different ways to use it. I do have a picture of no dose on here. It is recommended that you use it in a way that you know how much caffeine you're actually getting, right? With a cup of coffee or tea, it's harder to kind of figure out what the dose is in that. So much, different factors of how long it's been roasted and things like that. So if you really want to use this and target caffeine for use, it is good to use like a pill form or even some of the gels with caffeine. Some considerations, of course, it's a stimulant, affects everybody differently. So if it's a later in the day event and you actually hope to sleep that night, it might not be the best option. And some of the safety considerations, they have recommended limiting to a 200 milligram dose at any given time, not taking like 400 milligrams at once. Okay, we've made it to the group B. So these are supplements that have some emerging scientific support. They deserve further research. The research just isn't quite there yet. So it's not saying don't try these, but we just don't have as much research. So you've got the food polyphenols and antioxidant group. They may have antioxidant, anti-inflammatory properties. So they can be beneficial in certain situations. Tastants, these are interesting. They interact with receptors in your mouth and gut and activate the central nervous system. So if you've seen things like Hot Shot, which you would take, it's supposed to be like an anti-cramping for hot weather. That's using this tastant science, if you will, where it is not necessarily, it's not keeping you more hydrated, but it's just, using those receptors in your mouth to hopefully then not stimulate cramping in muscles. And then others, so some more common ones like collagen, fish oils, carnitine, curcumin, which is in turmeric, ketone supplements, and N-acetylcysteine. So just a few that I'm highlighting here. Again, in the interest of time, ketones have become, if you're in the cycling community, these have become pretty popular. So ketones, especially this beta hydroxybutyrate or BHB, are chemicals produced in your liver during starvation, prolonged fasting, or extreme carbohydrate restriction. So this is also the idea behind ketogenic diets. BHB is the most important metabolically, and the range that would be considered optimal for metabolic effects is 1 to 3 millimoles per liter in your blood. It's commonly used as additional substrate for muscle, which can help with enhanced economy, so less oxygen requirement to produce ATP, and that's why this has become so popular in cycling. And it also acts as additional substrate for the brain and central nervous system, which can help with cognitive function. Can also be used post-exercise for recovery. It can enhance protein and glycogen synthesis as you repair in recovery. So how these are being used, this HVMN on the bottom, that's the one that's been used most in research, and that is a ketone ester. So the top two, the ketone salts and the 1,3-butanodyl, the precursor to BHB, those haven't had as much success in research, and it's mostly because of the dosing. So the goal is about 40 to 60 grams of ketones to have an effect. And so one bottle of that ketone ester, the HVMN, only has about 25 grams of active compound. So when using this, you would likely need like 2 bottles of that. I don't know if you can see the supplement facts here. It's hard for me to read. My screen's very small, but it doesn't come near that 40 to 60 grams. It's more like 5 or 6 grams. So supplements that have ketone salts are likely not going to be beneficial at all. Considerations, cost. So the one that is used in research that they're using with some of the professional cycling teams costs about $50 per bottle. So if you're needing 2 bottles, that's $100 for one ride and one effect. The ketone salts, which are very unlikely to actually increase your blood levels of the BHB, they do have a very high salt load and can also lead then to GI issues. So really, to get the bang for your buck with this supplement, it's using those ketone esters, which are extremely pricey. So some benefit, but probably out of reach for a lot of us. Next, fish oils. These are very popular, a lot for like a heart health standpoint, but can also have some benefit in sport. They have anti-inflammatory properties, which help with recovery. They also can help reduce physiological strain by reducing heart rate, and potentially protect against reduction in muscle protein synthesis during periods of injury. So if you're injured, this could be another time. The idea here is to get enough DHA and EPA. These are your omega-3 fatty acids. And if you want to try to maximize omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. In the American diet, we have a lot of omega-6 fatty acids in our diet, but not a high amount of omega-3. So we're trying to swap that ratio a little bit to have these beneficial properties. So here's just an idea of how to use them. If you don't eat fish at all, the goal would be for 4 to 6 weeks to have 1,000 milligrams a day of EPA plus DHA. So on this label I have here, you can see it has 360 EPA and 240 DHA in one serving. So 500 combined in one serving. So if you don't eat fish at all, you would want to do 2 servings a day. So that would be, in this case, 4 of these soft gels a day for 4 to 6 weeks. And then you will get, that would be enough to elevate your omega-3 status. If you eat some fish, but not that regularly, maybe just 2 or 3 times a month, you would aim for that 500 to 600 milligrams a day of EPA plus DHA plus the food sources that you currently eat. And again, in 4 to 6 weeks, you would favorably influence your omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. If you do eat fish, or if you are in the previous 2 categories and did your 4 to 6 weeks of the recommendation, a maintenance dose would still be that 500 to 600 milligrams of EPA plus DHA a day. So if you do eat fish pretty regularly, you might not need to supplement at all. If you eat maybe once a week, you have fish, then aiming for, maybe you only have to supplement with 1 serving of the fish oil a day plus the fish you eat. If you are trying to go for anti-inflammatory properties or you're injured, you would aim for that 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of EPA plus DHA per day during those periods of time when you're trying to get the benefit. Here's food sources. So again, great to include. If you can get fatty fish in your diet, you're getting that 500 milligram EPA plus DHA. Some risks, it does act as a slight blood thinner. So if you're someone that's on anticoagulation medication, or if you have some upcoming surgery, just have your doctor be aware. Higher doses can lead to GI discomfort. It's best to consume it with a meal to reduce the effects. And then plant-based athletes, vegan athletes, are likely to have lower omega-3 status, even including like walnuts and flax and some of those omega-3 foods. So you can source fish oil from algae as well, instead of from fish. Okay, so group C, very briefly. This category I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because it really is not enough scientific evidence to support benefit or research. Not enough research has been done. I will caveat that with there is a time and place, let's say, for branched chain amino acids or leucine. As we went through those protein powders earlier, the leucine is really that amino acid that helps with muscle building. So if you are vegan or vegetarian and not eating dairy, or if you're recovering from an injury, that would be a time where, yes, maybe branched chains or leucine would be helpful. Same with magnesium. If you are not getting enough magnesium from your diet, then possibly, most of us do get enough, but there is a time and place for some of these group C supplements. And then finally, group D, these are ones that are banned from elite level sport if they're managed or overseen by World Anti-Doping or US Anti-Doping. So they have, they're banned or at a high risk of contamination of banned substances. Again, with these, while DHEA may not be banned for you in your sport, it's just kind of looking at the risk versus benefit analysis. A lot of these do just have inherent risk on their own. It's not just that they, enhance performance too much to be allowed in these competitions. But if you do take supplements that have any of these substances, just really consider, what are you using them for, and is it worth the benefit? Is the risk worth the benefit? And we're almost out of time, but 2 slides left. So sport supplement final considerations. With the elite athletes I work with, we always consider this as well. So first, are you choosing a diet that is performance-based and will maximize your training adaptations? Meaning, are you pre-fueling well? Are you being diligent of fueling during your longer efforts in training? Are you recovering well? Considering these things, if you're not, a supplement is not going to be very helpful. Supplements are there to supplement your diet and not to fill in gaps that need some work from more nutrition and food considerations. Other aspects of training, are you actually taking care of yourself with recovery? So massage and stretching and sleep and some of that body work. A lot of those, sleep especially, will go a lot further than taking a supplement as far as performance benefits. Cost benefit analysis, a lot of these do cost quite a bit of money. So just if your diet and your sleep and your recovery is as maximized as it can be, then possibly a supplement would be more beneficial. And what are you really trying to achieve? Are you just seconds or fractions of seconds away from winning or age group winning and your goals, or are you out there more to stay healthy and active and just keep yourself out? Kind of considering that as well. And then finally, this resources. So that Australian Institute of Sport framework, they have infographics. If any of these supplements are ones you're more interested in, you go to their website, you can just Google AIS or Australian Institute of Sport Supplement Framework. If you're interested more in how the FDA regulates supplements or how to report an adverse effect, here's a link for that. And then Intermountain does have a plethora of sports dietitians throughout Utah and neighboring states. So if you just feel very lost in all this, but feel like you do want to dabble in either more performance diet or sports supplements, there's plenty of opportunity and resources out there, and we can help you with that as well. I think that was all. Yes, so thank you. I don't know if any questions came through.
Thanks, Jessica. That has been great. Really appreciate it. There was so much information there. It was extremely valuable, but again, I think your resources that you provided were very helpful. If they want to go back and get more information, we only gave you a very short window to speak in, so thank you for covering so much. The only question I've seen so far was just about the link to where we can find the recording, and Patty did put that in there, so that is in the chat. I don't know if you're in the chat now. Somebody just said, wow, excellent information. I know we are a little over time, so we appreciate everyone joining us, but I know Jessica did say she could hang out a few more minutes, so if you do have any specific questions, please feel free to drop them. Oh, we got one right there. So is sports nutrition consult covered by Select Health?
Good question. Yes, we have been running them through insurance and has been going okay. So yes, as part of your 5, I believe you get 5 visits a year with Select Health. Those are included in there.
That was a great question, Casey. I don't know if anybody else has any questions before we sign off. I was looking at the beginning of the presentation. If somebody wants to reach out, was your email or information on there? So if somebody wants to reach out specifically to you with questions,
yes,
they can find that.
Yes. Let's see. I think it's not, but it is just my name, like jessica.laroche@imail.org.
Perfect.
Or you can just call the Park City Live Well Center and get a hold of me that way as well.
Perfect. That sounds great. And I would say maybe to close out for one last question or comment to share with all of us. Do you know a little bit more, or could you share just real briefly? Because I don't think a lot of our caregivers know, or again, even Select Health members know that they can see a dietitian and what is covered.
Yes. Yeah. So Select Health is great. They pretty much cover any nutrition visit. It helps if we have an MNT, we call it medical nutrition therapy code. So whether it's obesity or if you have high blood pressure or cholesterol, but we can just do like a nutrition counseling as well. So you get 5 visits. whether it's for sport or other needs, you can meet with a dietitian, an initial visit, an hour, and we kind of go through what your goals are and help you build a plan. And then we do follow-ups from there and just make sure that you're on the right track and aren't getting frustrated with your plan.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. I don't see any other questions coming in. I know we've gone a little bit over, so we appreciate everybody who has joined us, and we're looking forward to our next webinar in a couple weeks.
Thank you, everyone.